Tonight, we journey into Atlantis, the lost city beneath calm waters, a place of light, love, and quiet discovery. This story is part of the Sleepy Voyager series, created to help you relax, unwind, and fall asleep faster with cinematic storytelling and soft sound. If this is your first voyage, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss a new sleep adventure. And before the story begins, tell us where you're listening from. Our community drifts off from every corner of the world, and it's amazing to see how far Atlantis reaches tonight. Now, take a slow breath, let your shoulders soften, and let's begin our peaceful journey beneath the waves. Tonight, an observatory is said to appear, the hidden heart of the city, a place that mirrors the stars. Two lovers stand nearby, Nerion steady as stone, Lyra warm as the hush of velvet water, close enough to feel each other's breath. They hold a shared wish, tender and patient, to witness that secret glow. We will follow them, calmly, safely, softly. Let yourself settle as the city settles, and let the air move in a slow, easy rhythm. You can rest into the coziness of your bed, as though you're leaning against cool marble smoothed by years of gentle hands. The water around Atlantis presses like a soft embrace, and the sounds move with mindful calm. A bell far away, a line of lanterns brushing the current, a distant echo that barely touches your awareness. Breathe in, allowing the inhale to widen just a little. Breathe out, letting the exhale lengthen and fall away like a small wave melting back into the sea. You are safe here. You are warm enough. You can loosen your shoulders and soften your jaw as if a shawl were being draped across you, light, breathable, warm where you want it, cool where you need it. As your breathing finds its pace, the city finds it too. The hum beneath the streets is low and even, like a heartbeat you can trust. The canals move with a steady hush, brushing the bases of marble arches and glasswork balustrades. A faint scent of sea salt and jasmine drifts by, clean and quiet, a memory of gardens that open by moonlight. Let the breath match the sway of lanterns hanging from thin cords. With each gentle swing, your inhale rises. With each drift back, your exhale returns. If your thoughts wander, let them, the way a ripple glides under an arch and meets the rest of the canal. No hurry, no need to hold. The rhythm will gather you again, and when it does, you can rest deeper. Tonight's intention is simple and soft, a peaceful exploration of wonder and love. Nerion and Lyra will walk the city with patience, and you can walk beside them, unburdened, curious, unhurried. Every step is quiet. Every sight is a whisper. If sleep arrives, let it arrive. If you wish to linger, linger. The lanterns will keep their watch, the bells will keep their distance, and the water will keep its lullaby, carrying you toward ease. The city opens like a seashell, layered and luminous. Marble promenades trace the edges of canals that run clear and calm, their surfaces lit from within by delicate lamps and the glow of wandering fish. The arches that cross the water are made of glass and pearl, arranged in intricate patterns that catch the faintest bloom of light and send it back, softened and kind. Nerion and Lyra move at an unhurried pace along the nearest promenade. They do not rush, and the city does not rush them. Nerion's linen tunic falls in straight, quiet lines, the turquoise trim catching a muted glint when he passes under a lantern. His bronze wave pendant rests against his chest, warm from his skin. Lyra's dress drapes like water, the woven silver-blue details gently alive under the night glow. her shawl a soft echo of the slow current beside them. Her pearl earring gleams when she turns her head, a small moon to guide a small moment. They do not speak yet. Their hands meet, fingers finding familiar places, and a shared breath settles between them, warm and easy. The air is cool in that pleasant way that makes warmth feel like a gift. Their steps align, heel and toe, toe and heel, and the bridges ahead respond with barely there pulses of light along their edges, a promise of pathways waiting to bloom beneath their pace. Below the surface, slender schools of bioluminescent fish trace gentle arcs, their bodies writing soft calligraphy along the water. The light they carry is not sharp. It is warm at the center and dim at the edge, the sort of glow that eases the eye and smooths the mind. The fish turn together, then scatter, then gather again, quiet as a whispered thought. A resonance rises from under the stones, an ancient hum, steady as a lullaby, tender as the city's own contentment. It threads through the soles of their sandals and into their legs, a reminder that Atlantis is more than marble and glass, more than maps and lore. It is a body with a calm pulse. The sound doesn't demand attention, it offers it, the way a hand might reach out, palm up, and wait without hurry. Nerion's gaze watches the waterline where lamps hang in rows. He notices how the halos overlap and separate, how the reflections fold along the gentle ripples, how the stone edges soften when they meet a wash of light. His sea-green eyes, steady and attentive, rest on these shifting details as if the city were speaking through them in a language he has always known. Lyra follows the dance of small reflections across the undersides of the arches. They move like quiet stars, placed there by an unseen hand and slowly drifting toward one another. The scent of old coral and inked parchment brushes by, pulled from a library they both visit, a memory rising like a tide and then settling. She breathes a little deeper, and he notices the rise of her shawl. He tightens his hand just enough around hers to say, "I'm here," without the words, and the answer returns through the small press of her thumb against his knuckle. A silver bell somewhere on a moored craft gives a soft note that disappears into the canal's hush, and another answers it farther away, a conversation of bells that barely speaks above the steady sleep of the water. They pause near a curve where the promenade widens. A row of lanterns has drifted into a neat alignment along a thin line of current, as if drawn by a gentle magnet. The line arcs ahead, patient and pale, like a constellation laid upon the canal. The legend says that when such threads align, the hidden observatory begins its slow approach, the way dawn approaches a window, so gradual that only those who linger feel the change. Lyra turns toward Nerion, her voice a soft hush meant for his ear in the night alone. "Tonight is the 1,000th night," she says, and the words sound like a breath she's been saving. He nods, a small motion that eases the air around them. He answers with a smile that touches his eyes, and the corners crease as if to hold the moment in place. "We will walk with it," he says, "not to chase, only to accompany." They step again, and the promenade underfoot seems to respond, the faintest glow running just ahead of their toes, then waiting, then meeting them again. The arc of lanterns extends gently, painting a path across a small bridge where glass balustrades hold droplets of dew like captive stars. The city's hum shifts a note lower, settling into an even tempo, and the water hush deepens as if the canals themselves lean closer to listen. They pass beneath another arch where the reflection overhead moves like slow clouds in a mirror. Lyra's hair, with its copper glints, gathers the lantern light in thin strands that lift at the ends when a soft current kisses the edge of her shawl. Nerion watches the motion and, without comment, smooths the shawl back across her shoulder, the simple care of a practiced gesture. The warmth shared between them is its own lamp, steady in the cool air, not asking for more than this quiet walking. The memory of their first noticing arrives unannounced. A corridor of stacked coral shelves in the library, a scroll slipping from a careful grip, the soft thud on marble that made both of them glance down at once. No urgency, just an intersection. The scent of sea salt ink and pressed kelp paper, a smile that lingered one breath longer than good manners required. It returns now like a ripple finding the shore, then passes, leaving the present smooth. They approach a place where the path narrows and rests close to the water. The lantern line bends there, collecting itself like a river braid that's about to rejoin above. A cluster of star lamps flickers across carved stone, their reflections feathering across the channel. Nerion leans slightly toward the canal, listening to the way the hush drops on the far side of the arch. Lyra leans toward the promenade wall, reading the faint lines where old craftspeople etched measurements and notes, the city's handwriting worn to a whisper. The lanterns continue their patient alignment, one after another slipping into place along the current, until the canal holds a soft constellation that points toward the route ahead. Nerion and Lyra breathe together, a settled cadence, and let the moment carry them, neither leading, neither following, only matching the city's restful pace. Somewhere behind them, a boat rope taps wood, and the sound steps back into silence. They pause at the curve's end and look along the guided glow. The marble underfoot feels cooler, more polished by the night air, and the glasswork arches farther on seem to lean toward one another as though sharing a confidant's secret. The promise is not loud. It is a quiet invitation. The lanterns, aligned, wait like a line of friends holding small lamps, ready to walk beside them, ready to keep the way serene, and with that, they begin. Their rendezvous spot waits by a spiraling fountain carved into a shallow bowl, the water curling inward as if listening to itself. The stone bench beside it holds the night's cool, worn smooth by years of quiet sitting. Nerion and Lyra come to the bench without hurry, as if drawn by a gentle thread rather than a plan. The fountain spiral moves in a slow, even turn, the surface broken by tiny star lamps underneath that ebb and brighten as if answering a breath. They sit close, not touching at first, letting the night settle around them. The bronze wave pendant at Nerion's chest catches a mild glimmer, and stills Lyra's pearl earring gives a soft glow when her head tilts. Their hands find each other on the bench's edge, palms warm under the cool air. The first touch is familiar, a quiet ritual they never outgrow. The second is an answer, fingers resting lightly, saying, "We are here. We are simple together." Nerion speaks in the tone he uses when the room is already calm. "I almost thought the lanterns would wander away from each other," he says, and a smile carries through his words. Lyra's laugh is a small breeze. "They like to take their time," she murmurs, "like us." He nods and looks into the spiral. The fountain's motion is unbroken, drawn to its center, then released, the curve repeating in patient loops. They remember without telling it like a story. Lyra angles her head and the memory clears. The library steps, the scroll slipping from her hands, the soft bump at his shoes. "I worried it would unfurl and whisper everything I'd written," she says. "It would have been a kind secret to hear," he answers, "but I liked the way you reached for it. You held it the way you hold light." She breathes, and the shawl lifts, then rests. "You handed it back as if it were already safe," she says. That felt new. The fountain gives a small, hollow note beneath the water, and that sound goes quiet again. They turn to the tokens placed on the bench between them, small rounds of glass, each one trapped with a faint swirl of color. Lyra taps a sea green one and watches the color rise like mist, then fade. Nerion aligns two tokens so their edges touch, and a thin line of light bridges them. "These will answer the riddle doors," she says softly. "They don't demand. They respond when we listen." He traces the rim of a clear token and feels the almost there vibration that waits for willingness. "We can bring 3, she suggests. He nods. 3 will be enough if we are. They sit for a few breaths in an easy silence, and the fountain spiral seems to slow with them. Nerion adjusts the trim of his tunic, smoothing a line. Lyra draws her shawl closer across one shoulder, then opens it to share a corner across his arm. Warmth travels like a lamp being passed hand to hand. He looks at her. She meets his gaze, and nothing needs translation. "Do you remember the first time we sat here?" Lyra asks. Nerion's eyes soften. "It was after the last rain," he says. "The stones shone like fresh shells. Your hair held the light and would not let it go." She smiles. "You kept brushing water from the bench for me," he adds, even after it was already dry. She laughs gently. "Maybe I wanted to invite the habit." He touches the bench with his free hand, and the stone, cool and loyal, returns the gesture by being what it always is. "I brought the pendant then," he says, his fingers resting on the bronze wave. "My father said it keeps me listening." Lyra's hand, where it rests on his arm, presses once I wore the pearl he gave me, she says, the single one. It didn't need a pair to be sure of itself. They share a small silence that carries the shapes of people loved and gone, not heavy, not sharp, just present like the foundational stones under a street. Their breath finds one pace. The plan names itself, gentle and clear. "We'll follow the lights," Lyra says. "And listen for the low chime," Nerion adds. "If a door asks a riddle, we'll answer with what we know, and if we don't know, we'll wait," she continues. He nods. Curiosity, not conquest, listening, not seeking. She repeats it softly, and the words become a small light between them. The fountain's spiral shifts, almost imperceptible, to a deeper, slower rhythm, as if the city has exhaled and is content to rest on the pause. The lanterns along the nearby canal tilt in a breeze and settle again, aligning with the same ease. Nerion lifts the shawl edge higher across Lyra's shoulder and tucks it where it will stay. She steadies his hand as she does, her thumb smoothing the line of his knuckles. They rise from the bench together, leaving the tokens gathered and ready, the shawl shared, the pendant warm. The fountain gives a final soft syllable of water, and the night answers with a distant bell, low and kind. Their steps return to the promenade in one cadence, guided by the slow spiral they carry inside, and the city opens a pathway of pale turquoise ahead. They return to the quiet curve of the promenade where the lanterns keep their pale line, and the night holds steady. Lyra opens the shawl across both forearms and shakes it once, a soft flowing ripple that catches the faintest scent of sea salt. The fabric drifts like a slow wave and settles over her shoulders, then over Nerion's arm, shared again without ceremony. He smooths the edge so it sits snug against her collarbone, and the warmth gathers there, patient and kind. On the bench where they left them, the glass tokens rest like small moons cooled by water. Nerion lifts the clear one, and feels its quiet hum, a vibration as gentle as breath against the palm. Lyra chooses the sea-green token, its inner swirl rising when her fingers circle the rim, then fading as if listening. The third is a deep blue with a faint silver thread, almost invisible unless it catches a lantern's tilt. She places them in a small pouch woven from soft threads, the weave loose enough that light can seep through, tight enough that nothing slips. He adjusts the trim of his tunic, aligning the turquoise edge where it meets the linen's plain line. She notices the careful motion and, with a light touch, presses the seam where it lifts near his shoulder. The stitch relaxes and rests. He smiles, quiet pride softened by her attention. She returns the smile with a glance that says, "This is how we look after small things." Nerion draws out a thin square of sea glass from the pouch sewn inside his belt. The surface is etched with an ancient map, lines like shallow streams, curves like the drift of a sleeping tide. He holds it at an angle so the lanterns gloss the grooves. Lyra leans close, and together they trace the paths with the tips of their fingers, not rushing through, letting their touch slow when the lines soften and split. The map doesn't name places, it breathes them. Each turn suggests a pause, each crossing a steadying breath. "We'll follow the streams that feel like our pace," Lyra murmurs. He nods, aligning the sea glass with the canal's gentle current until the etched lines seem to bask in agreement. The bronze pendant warms under his hand. He listens for the low chime they agreed to notice, the one that would arrive like a bell heard from a next room. Not yet, only the sleep of water and the quiet patience of lamps. She checks her shawl's drape, then lifts its far edge and lays it lightly across his back, a warm thread bridging them. He shifts closer so the shared fabric doesn't pull. They try the fit of their hands again, as if adjusting a knot before setting sail, finding the same familiar place where palms meet and fingers rest. The lantern line ahead answers with a slightly brighter hush, pale turquoise bending toward their chosen route. The pouch of tokens hangs at Lyra's waist now, tied with a cord the color of dusk. Nerion reties the knot, simple and sure, and tests the weight so it won't swing out of rhythm. The small click of glass on glass is brief and calm, like a whisper returning to its speaker. She reaches to the cord at his wrist, an old habit, and gently straightens the braided strands so they lie flat, their soft sheen like water smoothed by a hand. Words come, easy and sparse. "We carry enough," she says. He answers, "We leave with less weight than we came." She breathes, curiosity, not conquest. "Listening, not seeking," he repeats, the phrase returning like a tide. The city hum agrees, settling into that even tone that feels like trust. They stand a moment longer to let their breathing match the lantern's sway. Inhale, the cords lift. Exhale, the cords fall. A breeze floats through the arch and grazes their shoulders. The shawl drifts, then rests, the fabric glimmering with the faintest reflection from the canal. A nearby fish turns, its glow briefly brightening, then dimming back to the gentler light of sleep. When they begin to walk, their cadence is unforced, steps laid down with care rather than effort. The map in Nerion's hand catches the lamps again, and in that fragile gleam, the etched paths seem to thread themselves forward, encouraging patience. Lyra's free hand hovers at the small of his back, not pressing, simply present, a thread tying them to the city's calm body. They speak in low phrases that maintain the softness. "If a door asks for color," she says, "we offer the sea green first." He nods. "If it asks for quiet, the clear one. And if it asks for time, The deep blue with the silver thread, she finishes. He turns the sea glass square, testing light and shadow. She steadies his wrist so the image doesn't wobble, and the lines on the glass settle as if soothed by her touch. Their steps carry them beneath another sequence of glasswork arches. Droplets hang along the balustrades like tiny bells that have forgotten to ring. The world holds still, as if pausing to listen to two people align. In that stillness, Lyra whispers a gratitude she does not name. Nerion answers with a small nod and a look that says he heard it anyway. They pass a carved column where a rope of design winds upward, pale turquoise traced into marble. Lyra's fingers brush the groove as they go by, a greeting to the workers who laid stone upon stone, the way one night lays itself upon another. Nerion's knuckles skim the cool surface too, and a faint resonance answers, gentle and even, as if the city were acknowledging the touch. The lanterns ahead tilt, and one of them angles enough to cast a clear, slender corridor of color across the path. Pale turquoise slides from their sandals to the low wall, crossing the water like a quiet bridge. It's not a command, it's an invitation. They breathe once more together, adjust nothing, and step into the offered light, letting it become their next thread. Then, like a promise spoken softly and kept, the path leads on. The pale turquoise corridor brings them to the first of the marble bridges, its surface satin smooth, its edges inlaid with thin veins of glass that hold a sleeping glow. The canal beneath is dark and kind, carrying a hush that feels like velvet on the ears. Nerion and Lyra pause at the threshold, hands joined under the shared shawl, and listen for the bridge's quiet temperament. The city hum rests even and low. Above, a lantern sways once, then stills. Nerion steps forward with the care of someone entering a familiar room at night. His heel touches the stone. A soft bloom of light opens under his sandal, a tender pearl of warmth that holds steady. As he settles his weight, Lyra follows with a breath that stays long at the edges. Her step lands beside his, and a second bloom rises, cooler, a faint teal, meeting his light the way two ripples meet and soften one another. Together, the blooms draw a thin line ahead. They begin across, and the line lengthens, answering each footfall with a patient glow. The bridge seems to listen for their rhythm. When Nerion's cadence stretches, the lights brighten, contented. When Lyra shortens a step, the glow waits, then resumes, as if nodding. They find a balance and walk as though the bridge were an instrument tuned to reassurance. Midway, curiosity leans them forward, and their pace grows a fraction. The light dims a shade, not scolding, just remembering its preference. Nerion slows, feeling the change through the soles of his feet, and Lyra matches him with a softened exhale. The glow gathers itself again, gently stronger, as if relieved they understood. They share a quiet smile, the lesson simple and human. Slower makes brighter here. They try it once more, a deliberate experiment born of ease. 3 steps unhurried, 3 steps almost eager. The eager steps hush the lights to a muted blue. The unhurried ones lift them back to pearly teal. Lyra lets a small laugh move in her throat, barely sound at all, more warmth than voice. Nerion's thumb strokes the back of her hand inside the shelter of the shawl, content to learn this language. With each span they cross, the bridge teaches something finer. The lines at the very edge of the parapet answer their breathing. Inhale, a shimmer like moonlight on shell. Exhale, a settling glow like evening on water. The effect is so gentle they only notice after several breaths. As if the bridge were shy about its own beauty, Lyra tilts her head, gray-blue eyes reflecting the hush, and lengthens her exhale. The edgelight calms to a pale milk glass sheen. Nerion mirrors her, and the whole span takes on the look of dawn held in the hands. They reach a join where the bridge meets a brief landing, a circular plaque set into the stone. Nerion places his foot on the plaque, and it answers with a single silver chime that seems to rise from within the marble. The sound is soft, a bell heard through cloth, and it slips into the canal where it spreads like a ring of light, faint and satisfying. Lyra steps onto the plaque beside him, and a second chime harmonizes ever so slightly lower, the two tones drifting together until they are one. Across the landing begins another bridge, narrower, its veins of glass thinner and more intricate. They pause at the start, letting their bodies recall the first span's patient tempo. When they move, they do so like a pair of hands weaving a slow braid. One step, hold. One step, breathe. The glow follows in small, obedient beads that join into a ribbon. When Lyra's sandal brushes the stone a hair too briskly, the ribbon thins. She slows, and it gathers back, forgiving by nature. They talk softly in the way that builds steadiness. "The first rain walk," he murmurs, thinking of polished stones. She nods, her copper-lit hair resting like quiet flame against her shawl. "And the way we learned to listen then," she adds, "how the city wanted us unhurried." He hums an answer the bridge seems to like. The beads brighten, almost approving. A gentle breeze threads through the arch ahead, and the parapet's inlay captures it, sending a faint echo along the span, not sound exactly, more a sensation like a soft brush against the skin. Nerion glances toward the canal's dark silk. Lyra follows his gaze, and together they pause, letting the echo pass through them and out again, leaving them looser. The ribbon of light waits, unwavering. Near the far side, the steps ask for true togetherness. The glow hesitates when they fall out of sync by the smallest margin, then resumes when their heels and toes reunite. It becomes a game so gentle, it feels like a lullaby. Nerion lengthens his stride a breath. Lyra shortens hers a breath. They meet in the middle, and the bridge glows as if sighing. They continue, learning to listen not only to stone, but to each other's bones, the hidden rhythm of two bodies arriving at the same measure. A final landing waits, marked by a square of glass set flush with marble. Their last step lands together on its center. A silver chime rises, softer than the first, and lingers a heartbeat longer, as if reluctant to leave. The canal hush deepens in response, and the glow along the span dims to a fond afterlight. They stand for a moment without moving, hands linked, breath low and even, the lesson completed. A pace found, a brightness kept, a bridge crossed by harmony. Then the hush folds back into the city's embrace, and the path ahead opens in calm invitation. The path lifts slightly and curves into a sheltered court where water gardens sleep beneath a canopy of glass. Inside, fronds sway with the slow patience of tides, and lantern kelp rises in soft stalks, their tips holding small orbs that glow like quiet embers. Petal lamps rest along low branches, furled for night, pale and unassuming until warmth brushes near Nerion. And Lyra pause at the threshold, letting the garden's hush greet them before they step into its tender glow. Air here feels warmer, not hot, just a gentle wrap of comfort. The floor is sanded marble, cool to the soles even through leather, and the channels that thread between beds of greenery sound like poured silk. Lyra loosens the shawl at her throat. Nerion lifts its edge and settles it over the curve of her arm. The nearest petal lamp stirs, unfurling a slender leaf that catches the light and returns it like softened moon. They breathe in, scenting something clean and sweet, salt touched by blossom, a promise without urgency. They move in, unhurried, and the garden's lamps answer their presence. A ring of lantern kelp brightens by a tone, the change subtle as a smile. Lyra crouches beside a cluster of bell-shaped blooms. Their surfaces hold pearly veils, dim until a voice calls them to life. She hums, just a breath of tone. The vowel open and round, a blue gently wakes inside the bells, pooling at the base, then lifting until the whole bloom glows like water, cupped in hand. Nerion listens, then adds a low note beneath hers, steady and kind. The blue deepens toward teal, and a passage reveals itself, a thread of illuminated fronds that leans toward a narrow walk. They stand, their voices lingering, and the light holds as if pleased to be seen. He smiles, quiet delight warming his face. She answers with a small nod and a whisper that feels like a fingertip against silk. Let's follow the color that feels like breath. They pass through arches of fern that remember the sea. Each step brushes a faint radiance from leaves that flicker and rest, as though politely applauding and then folding their hands. A curve brings them to an open pool ringed with petal lamps. These are still closed, pale sails waiting for wind. Lyra lifts her voice again, shaping a long ah that floats like mist. The petals stir and part, showing soft hearts of light that fill with a tender cyan. Nerion steadies the chord with a low oh, and the cyan threads into green, calm and grounded. The pool answers with tiny stars beneath its surface, bioluminescent seeds that drift toward their feet and hold there, a calm constellation at the water's edge. Lyra extends her fingers over the surface, not touching, simply warming. The stars rise slightly as if buoyed by kindness. She turns her wrist and the pearl at her ear catches the pooled glow. He reaches and adjusts a loose curl behind her ear, a small gesture that feels like returning a shell to its groove. There's a gentle puzzle here. Along the far bank, a living gate of vine lies across a low passage, its leaves shadowed and drowsy. Carved into the stone beside it are faint lines, nothing like letters, more like the softened edges of sound. Lyra tilts her head, listening. This garden loves vowels, she says, smiling. The leaves answer to shape, not to meaning. Nerion nods. We give them air that opens. She breathes and begins again. They try them like tasting tea. Ah opens a wash of teal along the vines. A adds a lace of pale green. E narrows the brightness and becomes thread-like, too taut, too waking. They pause, and the light relaxes back to its original glow, forgiving. Lyra returns to ah, warmer now, and Nerion folds in a soft ooh, round and low. The gate brightens from within, veins of light moving like a heartbeat under leaves. The vines loosen, parting with a slow sigh that sounds like contentment. They step through and find a corridor of lantern kelp arranged in careful rows, each stalk topped with a petal lamp that responds to warmth more than sound. Lyra's hands hover near them. The lamps unfurl and reach toward the gentle heat in her palms. Nerion offers his hands too, and where both hover, the glow joins deeper and steadier, a blend the color of sea foam at dawn. The path they make together curves left, then right, leading toward a soft teal aperture between hanging fronds. As they walk, Lyra speaks in the tone of remembering. Love is a lamp that doesn't hurry, she murmurs, and her voice seems to settle on the leaves like light rain. Nerion breathes a quiet agreement that lands close to a hum. It waits, he says. It doesn't ask the bloom to open faster. She looks at him, eyes gentle. It keeps warm the space where opening might happen. He squeezes her hand, and under their joined palms, One petal lamp brightens as if it heard and approved. Near the corridor's end, a single bloom remains closed, its edges faintly silvered, a small mystery folded tight. Lyra circles a breath around it, a soft "oh" that carries patience. Nothing moves. Nerion leans closer and adds silence, the kind that isn't empty, the kind that holds room. They stand there together without asking for change. After a long, easy moment, the bloom loosens of its own accord, revealing within a small doorway, engraved with lines like ripples. The engraving glows with a clear light, thin and inviting. They rest a breath on the threshold. The water in the channels hushes even more. The kelp stirs once and settles, and the petal lamps along the corridor dim to a calm, steadying. Lyra lifts the shawl to cover both their shoulders. Nerion adjusts the fall so it lies smooth and warm. Their fingers interlace again, familiarity like a soft cord held between them. The doorway's inner rim gathers a brighter edge, then softens back to welcome. A final hum, low and open, moves from them into the arch. The lines carved there respond, the ripples brightening in waves that travel inward. The garden seems to bow, a slow tilt of light and leaf. Nerion and Lyra step forward, carrying the lesson with them, open vowels, open hearts, warmth offered without haste. Behind them, the petal lamps fold their petals half closed, as if promising to keep the path safe while they are gone. Ahead, the small doorway gleams, and a current of cool air arrives, smelling of shells and stone, an invitation to continue, gentle as a hand reaching out in the dark and finding another hand already there. The cool breath from the engraved doorway guides them into a hall where walls curve like the inside of a shell. The light here is softer, sifted through layers of sea glass set into the ceiling, so that everything wears a calm wash of sand gold and ocean blue. The floor carries a faint pulse, slow and even, as if the city were remembering itself with each gentle beat. Ahead waits the mural, wide as a tide and just as patient, made of stone inlaid with shells, pearls, and powdered glass that holds light the way still water holds sky. They stand before it, hands joined, shawls shared across their shoulders. The mural opens in panels that read from left to right like a current carried along the shore. In the first, shapes of people sit near the seabed, listening. They are carved with heads bent, palms open. Around them, faint lines ripple outward, small as breath, no ships, no banners, only attention. Lyra's voice is a warm hush. They began by listening. Nerion nods. They waited until the water spoke clearly, and then they moved. The next panel shows hands gathering light with care, not grasping, not trapping, cupping the glow as if it were fragile and wanted to be placed, not held. The shells set into these hands reflect a tender gleam. Nerion leans closer, sea green eyes soft. "See the little lines around the wrists," he murmurs. "Hours of work, patient in the joints." Lyra smiles. "They rested when the pulse said rest," she adds, pointing to a small, almost hidden spiral etched near a wrist. Slower than the others, a reminder to pause. In the center, the city rises from the seabed, not through force, but through alignment. Arches meet like fingers interlacing, channels curve like breathing. Small figures pass tokens from hand to hand, the shapes familiar, clear, sea green, deep blue with a silver thread. Lyra's fingertips hover over the deep blue. "The thread of time," she whispers. Nerion touches the clear, quiet that lets meaning arrive. To the right, another scene shows lanterns strung low over dark water, each one brightening in a soft chain, the way one warm deed encourages another. On the far edge, two figures stand side by side, neither in front, neither behind. Their hands rest on the same stone. The shells around them glow a shade deeper. Lyra breathes, voice barely there. Shared labor, shared light. At the mural's base, small openings shaped like shallow bowls wait to receive what the hall requests. The bowls sit beneath select scenes, each marked by a tiny symbol: an ear, a pair of hands, a simple lamp. Nerion glances toward Lyra. She nods, and he draws the pouch of tokens from her waist, loosening the dust-colored cord. The glass circles clink once, soft as a tapped teacup, and fall quiet in his palm. They read the wall's language in silence, place tokens upon scenes of listening, patience, care. Not all, not many. Only enough. Lyra holds the sea green token above the first panel where people listen. The color within the glass stirs, as if recognizing home. She lowers it, and it settles into the bowl with a faint, agreeable click. A thin line of light travels into the stone, then disappears like a thought absorbed. Nerion chooses the clear token for the cupped light panel. He pauses, breath long, letting his hand grow still so the token's gentle vibration steadies. When he sets it down, the bowl warms under his fingertips. The mural around the hands brightens by a whisper of gold, not to dazzle, only to affirm Lyra watches, eyes reflecting the small lift. The deep blue token rests in both their palms before they place it. They carry it together to the panel where the city rises through alignment. The silver thread inside sways once, like a slow tide, then rests. They lower the token into the bowl marked by a simple lamp. The blue glows softly, the thread bright as a breath caught and released. For a moment, the hum beneath the floor aligns with their pulse, a shared measure. They step back, waiting without asking. The mural receives the offerings quietly. A low sigh moves through the hall, not air, more a settling of old memory into the present. From within the wall, tiny channels light in a heartbeat-like sequence, left panel, center, right, then fold back to stillness. A seam appears where there was none, a slender curve traced in sand gold. It widens with patient grace, revealing a passage shaped like the negative space of two cupped hands. They do not rush. Nerion lays his palm against the warm edge of stone. Lyra mirrors him on the other side. The passage brightens a shade, as if recognizing the gesture he glances to her. She answers with the smallest smile, a thank you for patience. Together they step inside, and the floor carries them forward on a current so mild it feels like the city's exhale. As they move, the mural panels along the corridor echo scenes in miniature: watchful hands, shared bowls, lamps tended by pairs. The images glide past at the speed of calm thought, asking nothing, offering anchors. Lyra rests her head briefly against his shoulder where the shawl crosses, and he steadies the fabric so it won't slip. Their breath matches the corridor's even tempo. The current eases them into an oval chamber where the light settles low and steady. The air smells faintly of old coral and rain on stone underfoot. The hum softens until it feels like a heartbeat heard through a pillow. Nerion and Lyra stand still, letting the quiet rinse away any leftover edges. Then, from somewhere ahead, a tone rises, deep, even, kind, as if a bell were struck far away and the sound arrived without hurry. The chamber answers with a deeper calm, and a path opens, blue as morning, waiting with an ease that feels like being welcomed home. The blue path widens into a pavilion, where the ceiling curves like a calm wave caught mid-rise. Panels of sea glass form the dome, each one a different softness of color: milk blue, pale jade, sand gold. So the light arrives in dappled pieces, gentle as shade under a tree. Cushioned benches ring the space, covered in woven fabric that holds a quiet warmth, as if it remembers every resting body and keeps their comfort close. They step inside together. The air is temperate and kind, carrying a faint sweetness like kelp warmed with a touch of honey. The hum beneath the floor lowers to a hush, then steadies, a slow heartbeat that invites the shoulders to loosen. Nerion guides Lyra toward a bench that faces a small inner pool. The water there lies flat as glass, only the tiniest tremor at the edge, a sign that the city continues to breathe. Lyra loosens the shawl and spreads it across the bench, then folds one end over Nerion's lap and one over her own. The fabric shares warmth between them with ease, a bridge as soft as breath. He takes a small flask from the pouch at his belt and tips it toward her. The steam that rises carries the scent of kelp tea, calm and clean. She sips, and the taste is gentle, green, a little sweet with a whisper of salt at the finish. Her eyes soften. She passes it back. Nerion drinks and feels his chest ease, as if the tea were smoothing the inner surface of his breath. They let quiet take the first words. After a while, Lyra speaks, voice low. "The first time we met by the library steps," she says, "I hoped I would see you again and didn't know how to ask the day to arrange it." Nerion's smile is small and real. "I stood in the doorway each evening, pretending to study the tide charts until the lamps were lit," he answers. "I thought if I looked up at the right moment, our eyes would meet and agree." She laughs softly, and the sound lands like a feather on water. "They did," she says. He turns the bronze pendant between finger and thumb. "I wore this then, because I was learning to listen to the pause before I spoke. The metal is warm, as if the memory has its own heat." Lyra lifts her hand to her pearl earring. "I wore this because it felt steady," she murmurs. "It reminded me to be simple when I wanted to be certain." Their gaze meets and holds in a comfortable silence that says more than sentences could, a stillness that makes room for everything. The pool gives a tiny sound, the softest tap, and small crystal strands above them answer with a delicate chime, like glass touched by a fingertip. Those threads hang from the dome, catching light in thin lines. They ring only when breath is even, the caretakers once told them, and tonight their music is a quiet blessing. Nerion's hand seeks Lyra's under the shawl, and their fingers fold together, palm to palm. Warmth gathers and settles. He speaks again, almost to the water. "I remember the scroll you dropped. It rolled to my shoe and stopped as if it knew me." She smiles. "It held a sketch of a little arch near the South Canal. I drew it too wide, and the space looked lonely. You said it needed a listening curve." He nods. "You redrew it, and the arch seemed to exhale." Lyra pours the remainder of the tea into two thin-lipped cups set in a niche near the bench. They drink slowly, letting the warmth move outward from their chests to their shoulders, their arms, their hands. When the last drops are gone, she sets the cups back with care, the tiny click of clay on stone as soft as a blink. "We are not hurrying," she says. "No," he answers. "We are keeping company with what opens." The dome gathers their words and diffuses them into light. In the hush, gratitude arrives, not as a grand feeling, but as a small glow that chooses to stay. "Thank you," Lyra whispers, without naming why. Nerion answers, "For this and for now." The crystal strands chime once more, brighter by a shade, and a seam in the far wall softens, the outline of a doorway returning from the glass like a tide revealing a path. It isn't sudden. It's as if the pavilion listened, found them rested, and offered the next gentle step. Nerion adjusts the shawl over Lyra's shoulder, smoothing it so it won't slip when they rise. Lyra straightens the trim of his tunic, fingers brief and sure, and the line lies flat again. They stand as one, leaving the bench warm in their shape. The air feels kinder for their stay, as if the room had taken their ease and kept a portion to give back. Later, the pool's edge catches a small light and sends it toward the doorway. Nerion and Lyra touch the sea glass frame together. It cools at their fingertips, then warms, and the door softens open, its edges gray-blue like early morning, rested and steady. They breathe once more with the pavilion, then step through, carrying its calm forward like a lantern cupped between their hands. The doorway opens into a passage where the ceiling curves low and kind, and the walls hold threads of light that move like ripples laid into glass. The air is cooler here, touched by the breath of nearby water. Nerion and Lyra pause at the threshold, letting the hush wrap around them. The shawl rests across both shoulders. Their hands remain joined, and their breathing returns to the even rhythm the pavilion taught them to keep. A gentle sound travels along the corridor, half echo, half murmur, as if the stone were repeating words it once heard and kept safe. Lines of brightness flicker within the walls, thin as hair, then lengthen with each steady exhale. Lyra tips her head, listening. "The tunnels here prefer honesty," she says softly. Their answer grows only when the voice carries truth. Nerion nods, eyes warm. Then we offer small truths and let the walls decide what to keep. They step forward. Water runs in narrow channels beside the floor, a quiet accompaniment, clear enough to show the soft shimmer of sand beneath. The first thread of light on the left brightens, then dims, curious as a friendly creature. Lyra speaks, not loudly, not for performance. "Favorite scent," she whispers. Sea salt at dawn and jasmine warmed by a window. The thread glows a fraction stronger, a line turning from pale to tender teal, and the light moves ahead as if inviting them onward. Nerion joins her with a breath that settles through his chest. "Secret hope," he offers. "To build arches that make people breathe slower when they pass." The right wall lifts a soft pearl tone, the brightness gathering into a ribbon that stretches a little farther down the corridor. They follow, unhurried, their steps laid down as if the ground were listening for the weight of care. The ceiling lowers another measure, and the whispering grows clearer, the way a seashell speaks when held close to the ear. Lyra looks toward a shallow niche where water beads and falls in slow drops. "Quiet fear," she says, and the words carry no strain. "I fear forgetting simple kindness when the day is full." The beads glow from within, each droplet lighting just before it falls and dimming as it joins the channel. Nerion breathes with her, thumb smoothing the line of her knuckles beneath the shawl. He turns his gaze to the opposite wall where the threads intersect like a woven net. "True thing," he murmurs. "I sleep better when I hear your breath near mine." The net brightens along one seam, then along another, the pattern resolving into a gentle ladder of light that leans deeper into the tunnel. The channels of water answer with a low, contented hum, not loud, more sensation than sound. They go on, speaking in turns, letting each small offering be enough. Lyra says she keeps a folded scrap of ribbon in her pocket on days that need a reminder to soften. The left wall's light bends into a curve like a smile, Nerion admits. He counts the heartbeats in marble when he's unsure of a choice. The right wall replies with a calm, even band, as though agreeing that time can be trusted. A bend arrives, slow and graceful, and the corridor narrows. The threads of light thin, as if listening harder. The whisper shifts, not warning, only asking for greater quiet. Lyra inhales gently and exhales longer. She looks toward a seam where a dim glow waits and says, "Truth. I like the way your laugh stays in a room after you leave." The seam brightens, a tender wash that travels forward, touching the curve and carrying their pace with it. Nerion's eyes soften. "Then, truth," he answers. "I like the way you choose silence as a gift, not as distance." The opposite seam receives this and opens a narrow stripe of light along the floor, guiding their feet. They reach a small arch cut from dark stone, its inner face polished to a mirror-soft shine. Across the arch, tiny marks trace a pattern like breath. Long, long pause. The corridor waits, expectant. Nerion and Lyra match their inhale to the first line, their exhale to the second, and rest on the pause together. The marks kindle one by one, and the arch releases a low tone that feels like a hand placed calmly on the heart. Beyond the archway, the tunnel widens and rises, and threads of light gather into broader bands. In this stretch, the walls answer to names whispered like secrets told to water. Lyra leans close and speaks the names of quiet places she loves: South Steps at dusk, the third bridge after rain, the bench where the fountain spirals. The left wall picks up each name and carries it forward in softened echoes, the sounds blurring into something like a lullaby. Nerion speaks names of textures: linen trimmed with turquoise, stone warmed by late sun, the grain of sea glass under his thumb. The right wall glows in layered hues, each tone a calm memory laid beside the next. A small pool appears where the corridor's two channels meet. Light threads from both sides dip into the water and braid together. The surface rests like polished shell, reflecting a faint lantern halo that exists only here, conjured by the meeting of their truths. Lyra kneels, her copper-reflecting hair glinting in the pooled light until it becomes its own soft torch. That gentle shine climbs the curve of the ceiling and finds the next seam above them. Nerion watches it catch, then lift, as if her hair had become a wick drawing brightness through stone. She smiles at the sight, more warmth than motion, and the pool answers by sending a slow ring outward that kisses the edges of the basin. Nerion crouches beside her, and together they rest their hands a finger's width above the surface, not touching. The water brightens under the shelter of their palms, a quiet promise of passage. When they rise, the braided light leaps ahead like a silver ribbon unspooling, showing a mirrored arch at the corridor's end. They walk the last stretch in a hush that belongs to them and the tunnel together. Before the arch, they offer one more truth shared between two breaths. "Lyra, I am most myself when we move at this pace, Nerion, and I am most at peace when we move side by side." The mirrored stone receives the words without echo, turns their breath into a lumen-soft sheen, and opens its reflection into a doorway that looks like sky held in water. A cool draft draws across their faces, easing any warmth that lingers. They step forward, the shawl lying smooth, the ribbon of light running ahead, and the whispering falls away into a deeper quiet that feels like the beginning of a calm tide. They step through the mirrored doorway, and the world widens into a cavern that holds light the way a quiet bay holds dawn. The ceiling is a lake turned upside down, water stretched smooth as glass, reflecting the shapes below with patient care. The floor's polished stone, dark and soft, veined with pale lines that drift like cloud trails. The air feels cooler, as if the room were keeping a long-held breath. They pause at the threshold. The shawl rests across both shoulders, warm where it touches skin, cool at the edges where the cavern's hush meets the fabric. Their joined hands glow faintly in the reflection overhead, doubled and softened until it looks like a memory of touch rather than the touch itself. A faint silver note lingers in the distance, not quite a chime, more the sense of metal near water. Lyra lifts her gaze. The ceiling water shows their shapes as if they were standing on the sky, their reflections rippling with each breath. Nerion's sea-green eyes take in the long sweep of the chamber, the gentle slope of distant stone, the lanes of light that drift like slow constellations along the floor. He draws a steady breath and feels the room listen back. At the cavern's center, lines of pale fire form a quiet pattern, broken into slow star-like dots that drift toward a broad stone gate on the far side. The dots don't hurry. They float, pause, then float again, as if the path were thinking, as if it wished to be sure of the measure it offers. Lyra squeezes his hand, and the dots nearest them hold still, like a chorus waiting for the conductor's first motion. The mirrored ceiling shifts when they shift. A step too soon sends a wrinkle through the water above, and the dots shiver, then dim. They wait, listening. The hum beneath their feet is lower here, less a tone and more a calm presence. Nerion nods to the rhythm. Long, long pause. Lyra answers with a breath that stretches in the same pattern. Together, they move. Their heels touch down with the care learned on glowing bridges. A soft bloom of reflection opens beneath their feet, not bright, a milk glass halo that keeps to the edges overhead. Their paired shapes settle, the water smoothing until their reflections match. When they step again, the star-like dots gather and drift forward, pleased. They continue in this way, step, settle, breathe, until the floor asks for more. The dots slow. The ceiling ripples with the slightest unease. Lyra tilts her head, reading the room. Our breathing leads, she murmurs. The steps will follow. Nerion lengthens his exhale. She does the same. The ripple melts and the dots resume their gentle drift. A memory finds him, unforced. Tide pools along a childhood reef where small lives glowed in tiny pockets of water. He would crouch and wait until the surface calmed. Only then would the shy creatures show themselves. Translucent shrimp, a pale star, a snail no bigger than a fingernail, leaving silver in its wake. I learned this once, he says softly. The surface tells the story first. Lyra smiles in the reflection, a warm curve doubled above. And the story asks for patience, she replies. They approach a shallow swell in the floor where the stone rises like a gentle knuckle. The dots break around it, then gather again. The overhead water makes a single long wave, then stills. Nerion and Lyra pause. The room answers by brightening the edges of the starlit pattern, guiding them along the left where the curve is kinder. Their shoulders brush beneath the shawl, and warmth migrates across the shared fabric, a small tide moving from one to the other and back. In the cavern's quiet, small sounds carry: the slip of leather on stone, the hush of cloth, the faint clip of Lyra's pearl against her hair. When she turns her head, Nerion's laugh is barely a breath when he notices the pearl's tiny echo in the ceiling. It rings like the memory of a bell, softened by distance. Lyra hears it too and smiles. Even the quiet has a reflection, she says. Ahead, a shallow basin interrupts the path, its surface as smooth as the ceiling's water. The star-like dots approach, then hover along the rim. Uncertain, Nerion kneels, palm hovering above the basin. His reflection forms beneath, the doubled hand steady as a boat in a windless cove. Lyra kneels at his side and adds the warmth of her breath to the air above the pool. The surface brightens, not by light, but by clarity, revealing a thin thread that runs across its middle, an underwater bridge so fine it looks woven from morning. "We cross by breath," she murmurs. He nods. They lean forward together, exhale in the even measure that calms the ceiling, and step onto the invisible thread. The stone receives them with a tender firmness. Beneath, the water stays whole, unbroken. Above, their reflections hold, mirrored feet meeting mirrored sky, and the star-like dots draw a path from rim to rim, then continue toward the far gate. They rise into a wider space where the sealing water opens like a lake at daybreak. The dots gather into long lanes and drift toward the gate, which waits carved with lines of sea creature grace and faint constellations. Before that threshold, the reflections ask one last harmony. Nerion and Lyra stand close, their shoulders aligned, their breaths braided. Inhale together, exhale together, hold the soft pause. The ceiling smooths into a single pane of quiet. The floor answers with a pattern of stars that brightens by a shade and begins to travel, slow and certain, toward the stone gate, drawing them forward like a gentle tide returning home. The starlit lanes guide them to a threshold where two great doors rise from the stone as if grown there by patient tides. Their faces are carved with constellations that curve like schools of silverfish, and with lines of whales, rays, and curling seahorses, all etched so finely that shadow and light feel like breathing across the surface. Between the carvings, narrow channels glow with a milk blue sheen, quiet as moonlight laid on calm water. Nerion and Lyra stand before the doors, shoulders aligned beneath the shared shawl, breaths easy. The cavern's mirrored ceiling has become still enough to seem like evening sky, and the reflections look back, not duplicated, but softened, as if memory were watching. A hush settles, deeper than before, the way a room goes silent when a long-expected guest arrives. The city's hum lowers to a gentle inhale. Lyra lifts her gaze along a sweep of star points clustered in a curve. She does not search for names, she listens with her eyes. The pattern carries a pulse she recognizes. Slow, slow, pause. Nerion traces a ray's outline with his attention, feeling the rhythm in his chest. The same measure returns in his palm where the bronze pendant rests, faintly warm. The doors do not wait for words. They wait for alignment. He reaches his hand toward the stone, not touching, only near, and the carved ray brightens a fraction. Lyra, reading his breath, lengthens her exhale and tilts her head to match the curve of a small constellation above the ray's fin. The light swells, no more than a tide inching up a step, but sure. Nerion's voice arrives low and steady. "Not names," he murmurs, "only rhythm," Lyra answers with a soft yes that sounds like air over glass. They begin softly, offering the measure they practiced across bridges and mirrors. Inhale together, linger. Exhale together, linger longer. Hold the pause like a cupped flame. The doors respond where sea creatures cross star lines, thin channels brightening at intersections, then easing back as if nodding. On the left, a cluster of points drifts toward a spiral. On the right, a ribbon of tiny lights travels along a whale's arc. The carvings glow not in sequence, but in conversation. Lyra lifts her hand and hovers two fingers over a delicate chain of star points shaped like a crescent. She leads with breath, not motion. The crescent brightens and sends a pale thread toward a school of fish carved lower. Nerion follows the thread with his attention, feeling the hum underfoot align with the long measure. Slow, slow, pause. When he meets the fish, a soft shimmer runs along their backs, as if each spine breathed once. A breeze arrives through hairline seams between the doors. It smells of distant rain and stone kept in shade. Nerion closes his eyes for a breath, listening to the drift of air, then opens them and smiles toward Lyra. "Guide me," he says softly. She brings her hand beneath his, not directing, only steadying the space. His sea-green eyes rest on the whale. He feels her warmth beside his wrist like a lamp. Their cadence settles deeper. Together, they count without counting. One long inhale draws a constellation to fullness. One longer exhale flows along the whale's curve, gathering the ribbon of tiny lights like beads on a thread. The pause holds them all, gentle and sure, until the carved seahorse flickers with a tender silver, pleased. Lyra's voice is barely a tone, I feel it, she whispers. The doors prefer patience to precision. Nerion nods, relief moving like a low wave across his shoulders. The left panel reveals a subtle map within the stars, two entwined currents, not exactly mirrored, but made to travel side by side. Lyra lifts her palm to hover over the top curve. Nerion mirrors beneath it the lower curve. Their breath braids in the familiar pattern. The currents brighten, turning from milk blue to a whisper of teal, and tiny chisel lines between them glow with a glaze like dawn on shell. The hinges answer at last with a softened sound, less a creak than a breath leaving a sleeping room. The seam between the doors thins, then widens by a thumb's width. A thread of air slips through, cool and kind. They do not push. They keep the rhythm, letting the doors learn their measure. The whale's arc gathers one more ribbon of light. The crescent's chain holds steady. The seahorse glows like a calm thought returning. Lyra guides Nerion's hand a finger's breadth higher, her touch only a whisper against his skin. His steadiness holds hers, and their shoulders incline together. The seam opens another finger's breadth, then another, until the breeze becomes a small, constant flow that carries the scent of rain on marble and a hint of fresh kelp. A faint silver tone slips from within, like a chime heard through cloth. The thousand-night alignment is not a flash. It is a door, deciding the moment is generous. Nerion lowers his hand. Lyra lowers hers. They keep breathing as the doors continue, parting at their own pace. The glow across the carvings softens, settling into lines that look like well-watered paths. When the opening is wide enough for them to pass without grazing the stone, the panels rest. The hum beneath their feet rises by the smallest step, as if the city had completed a long, slow exhale. Beyond, a drift of cool air invites them forward. Nerion glances to Lyra, her gray-blue eyes warm. Together, they step through the star doors, carrying their even measure into the quiet beyond, the shawl resting smooth, their hands still joined, the breath of Atlantis following like a gentle rain. They enter a chamber so wide and still that silence feels like a soft tide. Above them, the dome rises into darkness that is not dark, a velvet expanse where pinpoints glow with a steady, living hush. Below, canals thread through marble causeways in patterns too graceful to be accident. Lamps along the water's edge mirror the constellations overhead, as if the sky had leaned down to rest on the city's open palm. They pause, letting their eyes adjust to the tender light. The air is cool and clean, scented with stone and a whisper of rain remembered. The shawl rests across their shoulders, their hands remain joined. A faint tone hangs from somewhere high in the arches, like silver dust suspended in air. Nerion's gaze travels along a causeway that curves like a crescent, then follows its reflection in the water until it meets a second arc. Two currents, entwined. Lyra's breath lengthens, and the dome brightens a shade, as if pleased by their patience. They step forward onto the marble. The pavement is warm where lamplight falls, cool in the shadows, a gentle rhythm underfoot. Every bridge and path here has been laid to answer a star, every lantern to echo its place. Lyra lifts her eyes and names nothing. She listens to the pattern with her quiet attention. Nerion feels the old hum beneath the stone deepen to a soft, even heartbeat, the same measure that carried them through doors and mirrors and songs. The city shows itself. From this height, narrow canals trace lines that match the dome's constellations. A slender span glints where a cluster gathers above. A pool gleams beneath a solitary point, its surface calm as closed eyelids. When Nerion turns his head, light drifts across a marble balustrade like a hush passed from hand to hand. Lyra's copper-lit hair gathers a distant glow and releases it slowly, as if sharing warmth back to the room. He gestures toward a path that bends into the shape he saw first, two currents traveling beside one another. She nods, and they begin, steps unhurried, bodies softened by the long night's learning. The lamps beside them swell softly, responding to their measured pace. On the water, reflections knit into a ribbon that moves with them, a quiet companion. As they walk, they speak in low, steady lines that fill the space without disturbing it. It feels like we're inside the city's memory of the sky, Lyra murmurs. Nerion's voice answers, a touch lower than the room, and the sky's memory of the city. She tilts her head, and in the dome, a small cluster glows a shade richer, as though acknowledging the thought. They pass a circle set flush into the floor, an eye of pale stone encircled by a ring of pearl. Nerion slows, and the hum steadies beneath Lyra steps to the circle's edge and rests her fingers on the pearl rim. The ring warms and brightens, and a line of light glides outward along the causeway, touching lamps one by one, guiding their gaze toward a larger shape assembled across water and bridge. The entwined currents drawn wide, one line slightly brighter, one calmer, both necessary. They step onto the first curve. The marble holds them with tender firmness, their shoulders inclined together, their breath braids. As they follow the curve, the brighter line lifts by a breath, then settles, timing itself to their shared exhale. The calmer line gathers its glow when they linger in the pause. Nerion smiles, almost to himself. It listens to us listening. Lyra's fingers press his, and the lamps nearby deepen to milk blue, kindness made visible. Halfway along the shape, a ripple runs through the dome, slow and clear. Stars overhead shift by a grain, aligning more closely with the lamps below. The canal mirrors accept the change with a quiet sigh of light. Nerion feels the bronze pendant grow gently warm against his chest. Lyra reaches, touches its edge through linen, a small care that is also a vow. He turns his hand, and their palms meet fully, the shawl draping like a folded wing. They continue until the two currents draw near one another and cross at a modest plaza of pale stone. In the plaza's center rests a pedestal shaped like a calm wave. On it, a shallow bowl of glass holds still water lit from beneath. The water does not reflect them. It reflects the dome alone, stars turning slowly in a circle that no eye can hurry. Lyra leans, breath steady. Nerion watches the ring of light that rimmed the pearl earlier return here, faint as a heartbeat heard through walls. He speaks in a whisper, meant for her and for this room. The old map showed this place as empty. She smiles with her gaze. Empty by design, she murmurs, space for breath. They do not reach for more. They stand in their pace and let the room complete itself around them. Lamps along the far canals brighten and then soften. Bridges lift a shy sheen and let it fall. The dome holds its soft array. He looks across the plaza where a beam of light threads from the bowl across the water. It is not straight, it moves with a living curve, advancing, resting, advancing, as though shaped by two people's patience. Lyra watches it, and her eyes warm. The lattice here, she says softly, runs on whatever we tend daily. Small warmths, small listening, small alignments. Nerion's breath deepens. Love's rhythm, not its declarations. They follow the last bend of the entwined currents together. The causeway brings them near a low parapet. Beyond, the canals open into a quiet expanse where many lamps rest at once, their glow gathered like a tide beneath stars. Lyra sets her hand on the stone. It is smooth and cool and certain, like a promise that knows it will be kept. Nerion covers her hand with his. The dome lifts one shade brighter, not dazzling, only fuller. A faint dawn tone threads through far arches, the gentlest suggestion of morning somewhere beyond, stone and sea glass. The observatory receives it, not as an ending, but as a note added to a patient chord. Nerion and Lyra stand in the center of their shared shape and breathe together. The city listens, and in the water, a path of slow light gathers, ready to carry them home when they wish. For now, they rest in the truth that needs no proof. A lattice kept alive by quiet care, a sky that answers, a love that walks at the pace of stars. They find the center stone as the entwined currents quiet beneath their feet, a round platform set like a calm pupil in the observatory's gentle gaze. The dome's stars soften, and the lamps along the nearest canals breathe in the slow rhythm they have learned to keep. Nerion and Lyra step onto the stone and let their hands rest together, palm to palm, the shawl lying warm along their shoulders. A pulse rises through the marble, unhurried and even. It meets their heartbeat without insistence, settling into a shared measure that eases jaw and chest and brow. Nerion bows his head slightly, and the bronze wave pendant taps once, then grows still. Lyra closes her eyes, and the pearl at her ear takes a faint light, a hush caught and soothed. They lower themselves to sit. The stone holds a tender warmth, like sun remembered by evening. Water encircles them, quiet as sleeping breath. The city hum levels to a tone they can feel more than hear, a kindness placed against the center of the chest. Nerion speaks first, voice low and plain. Love is the way we enter rooms softer than we left them. Lyra's answer sits right beside it, the way we touch a seam and it lies flat again. The pulse beneath grows clearer, steady as a cradle rock. Lyra rests her fingers on the stone, and the heat there seems to flow inward, meeting her palm with patience. I thought it would be a shine, she murmurs, or a sign. Nerion smiles with his eyes. It is the pause we keep, he says, the pause that lets the glow decide to appear. They breathe. The dome listens. Lamps along the far causeway tilt by a fraction, aligning as if they have been waiting to match a gentle cadence. Nerion lets his shoulders soften another notch. He pictures the library steps, the scroll's slow roll, the day beginning to trust them. Lyra feels the small weight of the shawl where it crosses his arm and remembers the bridge that brightened when they moved together, slower and kinder. A tone rises, faint as silver dust. It does not demand attention, it offers it. The center stone answers with a subtler warmth, and the canals nearby gather a pale sheen that travels in rings to the edges of sight. Lyra opens her eyes. The water's light is not display, it is acknowledgement. She whispers, love repeats itself quietly until the room believes it. Nerion's breath opens. And when the room believes, it repeats us back, he says. They say little after that. Their silence is not empty. It is work done well and put aside. The dome's constellations pulse in barely their measure. Slow, slow, pause. With each cycle, a thread of brightness lifts from the lower lamps and reaches upward, only a hand's width, then rests. The city is reflecting itself, gently, like a person glancing into a still pool and daring to keep what is kind. Lyra's gaze lingers on a cluster above the eastern arch. The points form no name she knows. They hold an ease she recognizes. I feel my day here, she says. Simple tasks, folding shawls straight, pouring tea without spill, leaving space at doorways. Nerion nods once. I feel the arches curve in small choices, the extra breath, the softened step, the click of a cup set down without rush. The pulse beneath them agrees. A patient yes. The brightness gathers slow as trust, tracing a line from lamp to star, star to lamp, until a porous veil forms over the chamber, woven from the quiet of their attention. It breathes. It does not perform. Nerion watches the veil and thinks of his father's hands guiding his, teaching touch that repairs rather than displays. Lyra watches and thinks of her mother's stillness, the way she let a room arrive before she spoke. They rest their joined hands on the stone center. Heat meets skin, then recedes, then returns, like shore water leaning in and away. Lyra speaks in a tone near sleep. We return not for proof, she says, but for presence. Nerion's answer follows, steady, for the act of tending, which is its own light. Their words float outward and do not echo. The room has heard them and needs no repeat. Around the observatory, lamps lift by a breath, and the dome returns the gesture, stars blooming one shade richer, not brighter, just fuller, as if more of their depth had been allowed. The canals carry that fullness outward, lantern to lantern, bridge to bridge, a quiet wave moving through stone bones and glass skin. The city glows, not with show, but with consent. Nerion closes his eyes and counts the pulse. 1, 2, rest. Lyra matches, her exhale lengthening until the pause feels like home. He thinks of the bridges, she thinks of the garden's vowels. Both feel the mural's hands, the bowls that received only enough. The center stone warms briefly, then settles, as if stamping a seal on an understanding already shared. When they rise, they do so without breaking the measure. The shawl falls smooth, their fingers remain joined. They linger a breath to let the warmth leave no ache. The tone overhead thins to a thread, then becomes the silence that holds it. The veil of light loosens and rests, its work complete, for now Nerion and Lyra look once more across the canals, where slow brightness travels toward distant arches like dawn practicing. They share a brief vow, spoken like a cup set down with care. We keep tending, Lyra says, daily and small. He answers side by side, with pauses kept and doors unhurried. Their shoulders lean together, their breaths braid. The observatory yields a last soft glow in thanks. Then, the pulse beneath their feet gentles to quiet, and a path of morning blue opens along the water, ready, patient, sure. The path of morning blue gathers itself along the nearest canal, a narrow ribbon that lifts and settles as if breathing. Nerion and Lyra step to its edge and feel the city's pulse ease to an even lull. A small current forms, no more than a careful hand at their backs, ready to carry them through the arches they passed in hush and wonder. They do not hurry. Nerion steadies the shawl where it crosses Lyra's shoulder. She smooths the line that rests over his arm. The water accepts their weight the way a well-made cushion receives a resting head. When they lean into the current, It bears them with a softness learned from long nights and quiet promise. Marble slips past in calm shades of gray-blue. Lamps along the banks bow their light and then look on, warm and content. The first corridor opens wide. Shadows nestle in the corners like sleeping birds. Lyra's hair catches a faint glow, and the copper threads lifted toward the curve of the ceiling. A small lantern of its own, Nerion turns slightly to shield her from a cool draft that slips through a high seam. She answers by tugging the shawl a finger's width higher at his nape, small acts, simple and sure. The water, pleased, rounds its pressure beneath them, steadying the ride. They pass beneath a glasswork arch, and the current slows to match its quiet. On the parapet, a lantern tips as if in greeting and then stills. The tip is so slight it could be coincidence, yet both of them feel the thank you in it, as though the city had witnessed their patient steps and stored the cadence for later use. Nerion nods in the lantern's direction. Lyra's smile arrives without sound, a warmth that moves across her face like dawn moving up a shore. Memory beads rise and fall in their minds, light as shells in shallow water. Lyra sees the unfurling flowers of the garden and hears their pure vowels opening paths. Nerion senses again the weightless bridge across the mirror basin, the feeling of breath turned into stone underfoot. Neither speaks the memories aloud. They thread themselves through breath and bone, bright and private, then rest. The current bears them past an alcove, where the mural's language glows faintly within stone. The bowls at its base are empty again, tokens returned by some patient turn of the city's hand. Nerion lifts a palm in quiet acknowledgement, and Lyra mirrors him, their fingers reflecting a shared promise to bring only enough to any door that asks. The hum here is low and even, the same kind presence that held them at the center stone. Another draft meets them, cooler, smelling of old coral. Nerion eases nearer, a shoulder's breadth closer than before, and the shawl becomes a little tent of warmth. Lyra's hand finds the cord at his wrist and flattens one twisted strand, pressing it smooth with a thoughtless grace. He releases a breath that deepens from chest to belly. The canal answers by widening its blue, a lane of color drawn level as sleep. They drift by a series of small arches where light gathers in shallow cups set into the stone. Each cup brightens as they pass, then dims again, the glow following them like a soft echo. Lyra touches the edge of one with a fingertip as they glide by. The cup warms, then cools, a tiny wave passing through its skin. "Thank you," she whispers to the air. The arches send back an absence of reply that feels like acceptance. Nerion traces the line of the opposite wall with his gaze and catches a hairline crack running down through a polished block. He remembers a day mending a similar seam with his father's patient hands. Without thinking, he lays his free hand against the stone as they move. The city's hum meets his palm, and for a beat, the crack seems to breathe with him. In, out, rest. Lyra watches his profile and knows the old lesson is alive in his touch. The current smooths in response, less ripple, more cradle. They turn into a corridor where the ceiling lowers kindly. The air warms a shade. Lyra adjusts the fall of the shawl so it cups the space over their clasped hands. Nerion notices her dress's woven edge has slipped and sits uneven at the hip. He straightens it gently, the way he might steady a page before reading. She lifts her eyes to his, and their shared gaze holds a quiet yes that matches the city's pulse. A lantern ahead nods once. They both see it. It is not performative. It is companionable, like a neighbor leaning into a doorway at first light. The nod catches on the water, and travels back as a low ripple that kisses their ankles, then disappears into the next bend. The blue deepens, then thins, guiding them toward broader canals. Sounds they hadn't noticed return. Soft brush of fronds, a long, distant chord drifting through an unseen arch. They yield to the current's easy insistence, letting it set the measure of every breath, every blink. The city hum rises by a finger's width, as if greeting them nearer to home. At the last curve, the water widens into the central promenade's approach. The glow from many lamps gathers in a pooled sheen. Gentle but clear, Nerion shifts slightly to place himself between Lyra and a whisper of breeze. She answers by smoothing his tunic trim, easy and precise, as though pressing calm into fabric. Their hands remain joined. The shawl lies quiet, warm as a kept promise. They pass beneath the final arch before the open canals. A faint chime arrives from somewhere behind them, the kind of sound a room keeps until it knows it can let it go. They do not turn to search it. They carry it forward, the way you carry a remembered kindness. The current eases, inviting feet to find stone again. Nerion and Lyra stand, step onto the familiar edge, and breathe the promenade's soft air as if it were an old friend arriving at the right time. The canal opens to the central promenade as dawn gathers like a breath taken gently. Light arrives through the glass roofs in pale gold planes, falling onto marble that holds a soft pearl sheen. Mist rests along the low arches, a thin veil that keeps edges kind. Nerion and Lyra step onto the wide walk, and the city's hum tilts toward morning. No louder, simply clearer, as if vowels were shifting to brighter shapes. Vendors stir without haste. A cart's canvas is untied with careful fingers. Bowls are set out, stone against stone with no hard clatter, only touches placed in patient sequence. A woman sweeps water from a flagstone lip. The broom's bristles whisper across marble and leave it shining like a shell. Nerion inclines his head as they pass. Lyra returns a small smile to a man who checks lantern wicks, his motion practiced, his breath easy. Bridges that held the night's warmth breathe it back as the air cools. The glow along their veins dims to a fond afterlight, not gone, just quiet. Nerion and Lyra walk slower still, and the steps feel like closing a book softly. They say little. The promenade speaks in even chords. A gull's distant call threads through the glass canopy somewhere. A bell gives one calm note, then rests. They pause where two arcades meet. Columns rise like pale trees, and the ceiling throws watered light across the floor in gentle patches. Lyra's hand finds the stone, cool to the touch, reassuring. Nerion covers her fingers with his, and the warmth beneath the shawl pools again where skin meets cloth. Early risers drift by with nods that hold no demand, acknowledgments, not invitations. The city is a shared room where everyone has agreed to keep their voices soft. They move on. A baker opens a vent, a ribbon of sweetness passes and vanishes. A boy adjusts a stack of folded nets and stops when the piles sit square. A caretaker tilts a lantern to pour out yesterday's oil, and the drips land with the rhythm of slow rain. Nerion watches the small precisions and feels the observatory's measure mirrored in the ground. Lyra's breath settles into the same unforced pattern, and the pearl at her ear catches a strip of light that wanders across her cheek. At their doorway, the stone step keeps the night's stored heat, a small hearth beneath the threshold. They stand facing each other, shoulders almost touching, listening to the hum resolve into the day's tempo. Nerion smooths the last fold of the shawl so it rests flat against her back. Lyra straightens the turquoise trim along his tunic, a gesture quiet as a promise placed on a shelf within reach. Across the square, a final chime arrives from a distant bell. The note is silver and simple, the kind that releases rather than calls. A lantern near their door lifts on its bracket, the faintest nod, and returns to stillness. Nerion and Lyra share a breath that lengthens at the edges. The door waits with the patience of worn wood and well-oiled hinges. They step inside as the city brightens a single shade, and the promenade exhales into morning. Let the room grow softer now, as if marble were becoming pillow, and the canal were turning to a slow, steady breath. You can ease your shoulders and loosen the small places at the corners of your eyes. The night's gentle cadence remains close, like lamplight behind the lids. Feel the simple rhythm. Inhale, long and calm. Exhale, a touch longer. Rest in the quiet space that follows. The city's hum is distant now, kind and even, matching the comfort in your chest. If thoughts arrive, let them drift like lanterns on still water, glowing, unhurried, moving away without effort. The observatory's tender glow can settle behind your eyes, a mild halo that needs no attention. You can let your hands rest where they are, and the bed hold your weight the way the canal held two patient travelers. Warmth gathers where fabric meets skin, and you can let it spread in slow tides. Breathing stays simple. Inhale to welcome, exhale to release, and let pauses lengthen like early light across marble. Anything that feels tight can melt, a degree at a time, as if a shawl were being smoothed over your shoulders by caring hands. The room is safe, quiet, steady. If sleep comes, allow it to arrive like dawn in Atlantis, soft, certain, gradual. You can return to this pace anytime. The bridge that brightens when steps slow, the garden that opens to gentle vowels, the doors that part for patient breath. You are held by a rhythm that knows you. When you're ready, you may drift off or linger in this hush a little longer. The story's warmth can stay with you, a small light tended without hurry, guiding you toward a deep state of rest. Thank you for being here. Their door settles closed with a soft click, and the tender hush that follows feels like a shawl laid gently over the room. If you'd like to rest here, linger in this calm and let sleep arrive whenever it wishes. When you're ready for more, you're welcome to return to Atlantis or explore another gentle story waiting for you. Subscribe for new soothing journeys, and let this steady, unhurried pace carry you toward a good night's rest.